Tywin Lannister's betrayal of Tyrion was not a sudden emotional reaction, but the culmination of a lifetime of calculated political thinking. To Tywin, family was never about affection. It was about legacy, power, and control. Tyrion, despite his intelligence and capability, represented a liability in Tywin's eyes. His unconventional behavior, sharp tongue, and refusal to conform to aristocratic expectations made him unpredictable, and unpredictability was something Tywin could never tolerate in his carefully controlled dynasty. From a political standpoint, Tyrion's trial for Joffrey's murder offered Tywin an opportunity to eliminate a problem while maintaining the appearance of justice. Even though Tywin likely suspected Tyrion's innocence, allowing the trial to proceed served multiple purposes. It placated the outraged court, reinforced the authority of the crown, and distanced the Lannister name from scandal. Sacrificing Tyrion became a strategic move rather than a moral dilemma. Tywin also understood the importance of perception in maintaining power. Tyrion's reputation in King's Landing was far from pristine. He was associated with excess, with that bordered on insolence, and decisions that often embarrassed the family. By condemning him, Tywin could signal to the realm that even a Lannister was not above the law, thereby strengthening his own image as a just and impartial ruler. Another key factor was Tywin's long-standing desire for a perfect heir. Jaime, despite his flaws, was Tywin's preferred successor, while Cersei was useful in consolidating power through marriage and influence. Tyrion, however, did not fit into this vision. His physical condition alone clashed with Tywin's obsession with legacy and image, making him, in Tywin's mind, an unsuitable continuation of the Lannister line. Tywin's betrayal was also influenced by his need to maintain control over the narrative of his family. Tyrion had a tendency to challenge authority and expose uncomfortable truths, which threatened Tywin's carefully constructed facade. By removing Tyrion, Tywin could silence a voice that undermined his authority and keep the family's internal conflicts hidden from the public eye. Furthermore, Tywin's decision reflected his broader philosophy that individuals are expendable for the greater good of the house. Throughout his life, he demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice even those closest to him if it meant preserving Lannister dominance. Tyrion was no exception. He was simply another piece on the board, valuable only insofar as he served Tywin's goals. The trial also allowed Tywin to reassert his dominance over Tyrion one final time. Their relationship had always been marked by tension and defiance, with Tyrion repeatedly proving his worth despite Tywin's disdain. By orchestrating a situation where Tyrion was powerless, Tywin reaffirmed his belief that control ultimately rested with him. Additionally, Tywin may have seen Tyrion's survival as a long-term risk. Tyrion's intelligence and resilience made him capable of becoming a political rival if left unchecked. Eliminating him preemptively ensured that no future challenge would arise from within the family itself, a move consistent with Tywin's ruthless pragmatism. The betrayal was also a reflection of Tywin's inability to separate personal bias from political judgment. While he prided himself on rational decision-making, his deep-seated resentment toward Tyrion clouded his objectivity. This bias made it easier for him to justify a decision that, under different circumstances, he might have approached more cautiously. In the end, Tywin's actions were driven by a belief that the survival and dominance of House Lannister outweighed any individual's life. Tyrion's betrayal was not an anomaly, but a natural extension of Tywin's worldview, where power was paramount and personal relationships were secondary to the legacy he sought to preserve. Beyond politics, Tywin's betrayal of Tyrion was deeply rooted in personal resentment that had been building since Tyrion's birth. Tywin blamed Tyrion for the death of his beloved wife, Joanna, a loss that left a permanent scar on his psyche. This association turned Tyrion into a living reminder of grief, making it nearly impossible for Tywin to view him with any semblance of paternal affection. Tywin's disdain was further amplified by Tyrion's physical appearance, which he saw as a stain on the Lannister image. In a society that valued strength and beauty, Tyrion's dwarfism was, to Tywin, an unforgivable imperfection. This prejudice shaped his perception of Tyrion as inherently lesser, regardless of his achievements or intellect. Tyrion's personality only deepened this divide. His wit, sarcasm, and refusal to be intimidated often clashed with Tywin's authoritarian nature. Where Tywin demanded obedience, Tyrion offered defiance. This dynamic created a relationship built on mutual frustration, with Tywin interpreting Tyrion's behavior as disrespect rather than resilience. The betrayal during the trial can also be seen as the culmination of years of suppressed hostility. Tywin had long sought opportunities to diminish Tyrion, and the accusation of regicide provided the perfect pretext. It allowed Tywin to act on his resentment under the guise of justice, masking personal vendetta as legal necessity. Tywin's treatment of Tyrion was also influenced by his own insecurities. Having spent his life restoring the honor of House Lannister after his father's failures, Tywin was obsessed with maintaining control and projecting strength. Tyrion's existence, which challenged societal norms and expectations, threatened this carefully curated image. Another layer of resentment stemmed from Tyrion's undeniable competence. Despite his father's disdain, Tyrion repeatedly demonstrated his capability, particularly during his tenure as Hand of the King. These successes may have been difficult for Tywin to reconcile with his belief that Tyrion was unworthy, creating a tension between reality and perception. Tywin's inability to acknowledge Tyrion's value led to a form of cognitive dissonance. Rather than reevaluating his opinion, he doubled down on his negative view, interpreting Tyrion's achievements as anomalies rather than evidence of merit. This mindset made it easier to justify extreme actions against him. The betrayal was also a way for Tywin to assert dominance in a relationship where he often felt challenged. Tyrion's independence and refusal to seek approval undermined Tywin's authority By condemning him, Tywin reestablished a sense of control, reinforcing the hierarchical structure he valued. Tywin's emotional detachment played a crucial role as well. He was not a man who allowed sentiment to interfere with decision-making, especially when it came to those he already viewed with contempt. This detachment made it possible for him to orchestrate Tyrion's downfall without apparent remorse. Ultimately, the betrayal was as much about Tywin's internal struggles as it was about external circumstances. His unresolved grief, rigid worldview, and deep-seated biases converged in a decision that was both politically expedient and personally satisfying. Tyrion was not just a scapegoat. He was the embodiment of everything Tywin could not accept, making his betrayal almost inevitable. In the aftermath of Tyrion's condemnation, Tywin likely believed he had finally resolved what he saw as a lifelong complication. Removing Tyrion was, in his mind, a form of closure, an end to years of frustration, embarrassment, and internal conflict. Yet this decision also revealed a blind spot in Tywin's otherwise sharp strategic mind. He underestimated the emotional consequences of his actions, particularly the depth of Tyrion's pain and the potential for retaliation. Tywin's inability to recognize Tyrion's loyalty further highlights the tragedy of the betrayal. Despite everything, Tyrion had often acted in the best interests of his family, defending King's Landing, stabilizing the realm, and even seeking his father's approval. Tywin dismissed these contributions, interpreting them through a lens of bias that prevented him from seeing Tyrion as an asset. This misjudgment ultimately cost him more than he anticipated. There is also a sense that Tywin's actions were driven by a need to maintain a rigid worldview that left no room for contradiction. Accepting Tyrion as worthy would have required Tywin to confront his own prejudices and past decisions, something he was unwilling to do. Instead, he chose the simpler path of elimination, preserving his beliefs at the expense of truth and, ultimately, his own safety. In the end, Tywin's betrayal of Tyrion stands as a powerful example of how personal flaws can undermine even the most calculating individuals. His political brilliance could not compensate for his emotional rigidity and deep-seated resentment. What he saw as a decisive and necessary act became the catalyst for his downfall, proving that even the most strategic minds are vulnerable when blinded by their own convictions.